volume and all of that. I'm going to start this series off with a very unusual subject matter because it's pertinent to what we're studying. Psalms 135, verse 15. Psalms 135, verse 15. The idols of the nations are like silver and gold, and they are made by human hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. Amen. We're going to study the subject matter this morning, nobody before him. I want you to put that down. And I know it's quiet already. We're just going to hammer this in. I want you to put your hand on your chest real quick and say, nobody's before him. Nobody's before him. To understand the power in this psalm, I want to take you to Exodus, the 18th chapter, where there is a story about the deliverer Moses, who has recently been confronted and subsequently contracted by I Am. And he is fresh in his leadership journey. And before the Hebrews receive Moses as anything, they receive him in the capacity of judge. We know that Moses is more than judge, but he is now in a dualistic function to the Hebrews as priest and judge. What that means is that he is in charge of the nation's piety. He is showing them what it is and what it means to offer solidarity to a God. And he is also helping this nation to understand that it is their relationship to whatever they serve that's going to determine, that's going to impact their civil and their social affairs. So he takes on this role of helping to establish society among the Hebrews. The reason why that's important is because they were not a society. This is a new nation. They were slaves. They were slaves. And they were slaves under the oppression of the Egyptians. And their workload, their worth, their health was all determined by the oppressive power of the Egyptians. Pharaoh subsequently would end up being the one who made the decisions about what was right or wrong, allowable or not for the brand new nation. After Exodus 3, when God confronts Moses and he challenges Moses to go to the people of the Hebrews, because God said, I have heard the cry of my people and I've come down. Now Moses, who has just found out that he is actually one of the Hebrews, is deputized by his destiny to go back to this nation and to now introduce to them somebody they have not known. Mind you, this is not a reintroduction. They are not getting reacquainted. This is our only account of a whole body of people, a whole ethnic group, a whole social group, and their relationship to a God who called himself Jehovah. We find that his journey starts to unveil, and from Exodus chapter 3 on the way back to Exodus chapter 18, God is demonstrating powerful miracles, powerful judgments. He is so dedicated to the deliverance of this nation that he literally stops to nothing. I mean, from opening up seas to swallowing up the firstborn of their enemies. He even got so passionate about the deliverance of this people that he started to mess with the rotors and the brakes on the cars of their adversary. The Bible said that when Pharaoh started to pursue them hard pressed after he made his decision to not follow God, God broke the brakes of the enemy. It said that when they were trying to run after the Hebrews, that their literal tires started to fall off. We saw uncommon thing. He aroused an army of locusts and flies and frogs, and he started to do really uncommon war techniques, but there was something he did not do. The one thing he did not do was address the nation directly. They saw miracles of power combat. Jannes and Jambres got before Moses and said, yo, you're not the only guy who can use a staff. We got a staff too. And they had a serpent that ended up becoming of their staff to show that power was present at this place. And not only was power present, it was being claimed by more than one party. They had access to something that would enable them to do what was supernatural, even if it did not come from the one true God. We now see a theme. Moses is forced to try to groom the nation and educate the nation on what law is and what ethics are and what morality is. And then we get to Exodus 18, and Moses is in his first leadership crisis. Well, maybe his second one. The first one was having people be upset with who he chose to marry, but you ain't got time for that. In 18, he is at his father-in-law's house named Jethro. And in Exodus chapter 18, Jethro comes and positions Moses for wisdom because Moses is about to have to go into the next realm of his destiny. Heretofore, he's been acting as a judge, and Jethro says, I'm not a judge, but I'm a shepherd, so I know exactly what it is to manage multiple things around the survival of the naive. I lead sheep. You lead people who want bondage. And so categorically, we're going to have the same exact issues. I want you to start to tear off your responsibilities, Moses. Maybe you need to reserve your most potent energy to a certain tier of people and then begin to disperse the responsibility among those tiers so that you don't tire yourself out. Moses went to his father-in-law and was like, this people is too much for me. You know the story. Moses would occupy himself with sitting by trees and going to houses to settle the disputes of people. But heretofore, he was the only person that had heard God's voice. Nobody had ever heard it but Moses up until this point. In Exodus, the 19th chapter, they come to a place called Sinai. And round about this time at Sinai, Moses has taken the wisdom that he's gotten from Jethro, and now he knows that God is about to start bringing them through another level of drama. There was going to be a dramatic deliverance because there are some deliverances that are not as complex as others. There are some deliverances that don't take as much. But people like me, we had to have dramatic deliverances. There are those of you that could come off of squares with a patch. There are others of us that needed a cloud and fire and angels to come. And maybe you didn't need to have a dramatic deliverance, but the forces of darkness don't oppose every life in the same way. Depending upon what you're called by God to do, the level of the target on your back and on your destiny and on your family is going to vary. And so God knew that this new nation needed to see him in his full expanse. He was about to show them that I am God, and when I flex, the game is over. I am God, and when I play my card, there's no other rounds. I am God, and there is not another belt that can come back to me. They didn't know this. All they knew was what Moses was conveying and what Moses was portraying, but they were about to see him face to face. I find it interesting that in Exodus 19, when he gets in front of the Hebrews, God tells Moses this: I want you to come up before me. It's very powerful. And I want you to let them stay at bay, but I want them to watch me talk to you. Because if they watch me talk to you, then they'll trust you. And it's so important when you tap into the life of a leader. What you should be tapping into is how well he hears from God. If you subject your future or you subject your life to the direction of a deaf leader, then what's going to happen is you're going to always have to battle the power of deception because you're not confident in how well your head hears. Good God from Zion. God told Moses, I want them to know that I'm talking to you. I'm not ready to talk to them, but I want them to see that you talk to me. And I want them to even know how consistently I talk to you. Every time I get ready to call you, wake them up. Tell them not to come close lest I break out against them. But I want them to see me talking to you. You've got to demonstrate before the people that a part of how I do leadership in this new nation is I talk to them before I trust them. And as I talk to them, I start to trust them, but I can't trust them if I can't talk to them. That means that when a person has resolved in their heart to not hear God, what they've done is they've moved them from under a realm of trust between them and God, because all trust grows by a free flow of communication. Anyway, you're bored. And so what happens is God told Moses when he finally came up to the mount called Sinai, he told Moses, okay, I'm about to change my communication approach. There has been a barrier right now because of what they want. Pay attention. And they are in a conflict between what they want and who I am. Not what I want. They're not in a place yet to know what I want. I'm just trying to show them who I am. And in order to do that, I've got to break down a barrier between our communication. So I tell you what, Moses, I want you to go down and I want you to take 3 days. Pay attention. And on the first day, I want you to consecrate them. And then on the second day, I want you to consecrate them. And then prepare for the third day, because on the third day, I'm going to come down. This is all in Exodus 19. And here's how specific God was, Ross. He said, now by the third day, I want you to even tell the married couples, don't engage in sexual relationship, because once I start talking to them, if something else has enticed them, then what happens to their body is those passions are going to drain out what I want and what I'm saying. They're going to hear the burnings in their body, the burnings in their chemical, the burnings in their ambitions, the burning in their, so tell them, abstain before I get ready to talk. Makes me see a trend here. It means that when a people or a person or a nation or a generation is more invested in what feels good, then it means that they cannot always hear God accurately. We have got to come out of the idea that just because it's good that we think that it's God, but everything good is not God. God is good, but what you think is good may not be God. Moses starts to consecrate the people. Here he comes. He starts to consecrate the people. He starts to consecrate the people. He starts to consecrate the people. They didn't need to be consecrated to hear God through Moses, but they needed to be consecrated to hear God without Moses. That means that there is a level of consecration that's necessary to hear him clearly. Now, you can be just as undecided, just as weak, just as fragile as you want if you only want to hear God through your leader. But if you want him to start to give you some stuff that ain't got nothing to do with what you're learning on a Sunday, you got to wash yourself. The Bible said that he got in front of Moses and told them, I'm going to consecrate you, but when I'm done, watch this, you got to go home and do your laundry. I can only do half of it. You got to do the other stuff about what you wear and how you appear, and if you don't, when I talk to you, I'll break out against you. He takes 3 days and he starts to consecrate the people. And on the end of the third day, God says something very powerful to Moses. He said, bring them near, but set parameters. Make sure that they stay at the bottom of Sinai. And Moses is like, but I just did everything you said. He said, I appreciate what you said. Then the language changes. He said, but not all of them can stand, and some will perish. What that meant was that there was a corporate call to consecration, because what God had to say to them was a conversation issue, and God was trying to show them that there is a marriage between consecration and conversation. I know the human heart. I designed the human heart, so I know what happens is when people are not holy, there are certain things they don't want to hear. So what I want to do is make sure that you are as consecrated. You don't like this gospel, that they are as consecrated as they need to be because of what I want to say. God told Moses, I'm coming down. And when I come down, they're going to know it. I'll allow them, this is all Exodus 19, I'll allow them to come close only after they've heard a long blast from a ram's horn. When the ram horn calls, then that's going to be their sign that it's okay to approach me. The Bible said at morning of the third day that there was a ram horn blast. It was loud. And all of a sudden the Hebrews started coming out of their houses, and they saw Moses doing what Moses always did, which was lifting his hand to listen. Leaders have to be professional listeners. They have to be disciplined listeners. They have to be people who don't move beyond their listening, who don't lead beyond their listening, because listening is how the leader learns. If you are an unlistening leader, you are an unlearned leader, and you can't take somebody to the next level unlearned. Here he goes. On the top of Sinai, there's fire and thunder, and it's kind of scary, and it's smoke, and Moses goes up into this fire. And the Israelites start to hear God talking to Moses. This is revolutionary because nobody heard God before Moses in this instance. The nation, corporately, they didn't know what God sounded like. They know what they saw on the top of that mountain. And when God came down on Sinai, he told Moses, I am about to give you a series of instructions that's going to teach them how to forever live their lives. It's going to get good in a minute. What I'm going to give you is going to set up the canopy for every nation, every race, watch this, in perpetuity. What I'm getting ready to say to them is going to be the premise for how they live their lives in righteousness. Moses comes off of the mountain and tells the people, God wants to talk again, but he wants to say something else to you. We go into Exodus chapter 20, and there is a joint, unanimous request from the Hebrews. Hey, Moses, let's make a deal. When we were on the bottom of Sinai, it scared us. We don't know if we have it in us to endure whatever was happening on that mountain with you and God. We could hear things, as it were, come round about it, but we were afraid that if he kept talking, we were going to die. Why don't you just go up for us? It's in the book. And then you come back down and tell us because we don't want to hear him. We see the benefit of it. We understand that there are blessings associated with it, but we would much rather listen to who we can see than try to hear who we can't. Because if we got to listen to who we can't see, then when we get afraid about what he said, we're not going to have anything else to rely on. And now we have, here we go, the institutionalization of official idolatry. It is not the birth of idolatry. Idolatry came Genesis 3:8. Adam! I feel like preaching now. Where are you? Where you at? And Adam says, I heard the sound of your voice in the garden, and I ran and was afraid because I was naked. And God didn't tell Adam, well, why you run from me? What did God ask him, Dre? He said, who told you were naked? God, before God dealt with Adam's character, he dealt with the conversation he just had. Somebody else must have put this in you. Before you talk to him, you look like me. Now you're running from me because you were talking to him. I feel like working now. Idolatry was born in Eden when Adam wanted another option. Idolatry was born when there was a discontentment with whatever God said. It cannot be this simple. It cannot be this narrow. I need to explore my routes. I need to see what else is out there. I want to see what is beyond Eden. You put me here. I want to know what is there beyond there. And whenever he decided that those commandments were a punishment, here came the serpent to deceive him. And now we see a relationship where mankind is forced through the Adam, the man-like nature, to talk to something other than God. You ain't convinced yet, but let's look at Genesis 12. Hey, Abram, I tried this with Adam. I tried to get him to be what you are about to be. Realize that had Adam obeyed God, he would have been the father of many nations. But the reason why Abram had to become the father of many nations was because the deception that Adam fell in made him renounce his destiny. He was the first of mankind. Jesus is not called the second Abraham. He's called the second Adam. It took 42 generations to try to redeem the deception from one conversation between a man who didn't believe that God was good enough. It took all of that time to outplay a story because somebody couldn't control their conversation. Come on, Abram. Get from your father's house. It's going to get to my text in a minute, but you got to get to your father. Get out of your father's house to a land I'm going to show you. Where? I'm going to show you where it's going to be. I'm going to tell you. But I got to leave my daddy. Yes. Don't take your nappy head uncles. Don't take Lot. But Lot grew up without a father, and Lot grew up without this. I just feel like if I'm following you, I've got to help him. Okay? Fool around and take him with you. What you didn't know, the Hebrew word is Baalim, B-A-A-L-I-I-M. It means many devils or many gods. And the Bible says that Abram's father had Baalim in his tent. It was not obvious. He didn't wear them out. It was not like the other ones. They were secret idols. These were idols that he only worshiped when nobody's looking. There are obvious idols, and then there are private ones. And the Bible said that Abraham's father had Baalim in his closet, and it was in the closet where he kept the food, which meant he probably worshiped it for provision. So he didn't do it in front of the people. He did it when he was worried about how he was going to eat and how he was going to drink and what his kids were going to do. Listen to me. When an idol is trying to claim you, it's going to offer you form and fortune. It's going to offer you provision. Every major seduction in your life is going to have a lie attached to it concerning what's better over here. Get out of there, Abram. Get out of there, Abram. Abram's like, okay, and Abram's crying like, why I gotta leave my daddy? And God was like, because of what he worships. I don't have a personal problem with him, but the way I am and who I am is because I lead men through talking to them. They can't see me and live, so the most powerful thing I'm gonna put on the planet is my word. If you have to look at me, you're going to die. So I'm gonna give you something a little more powerful than an image of me. I'm going to give you my voice, my sound, my ruah. You will know exactly what it is for me to walk, and it's going to be so powerful. I'm not going to ever use a microphone. I'm God. I'm going to lift up my voice, and the sun will listen, the moon will listen, the stars will listen, and I'm so God, I've only got to say it once, and they're never going to disobey me. God told the sun to come up one time, and here we are several centuries later, and the sun is waking up every morning. He coded the ability to respond to his voice inside of all of creation. Real message is 2 seconds long. Come here, Elijah. What's your problem with Israel? What's your problem with Israel? What they doing wrong? Jezebel out here saying witchcraft and loosing stuff on them. Is that your problem? What's your problem? No, Lord. I alone am left. I'm the only one left. I tell you what, I want you to go. 1 Kings 18:1. I want you to go on another mountain. All of this scenery is very similar. And when you get to that mountain, I want you to challenge their prophets, their spokespeople, to make an offering. Let's